Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So it's come around again to the the weekly observance night that Buddhists around the world will often come to a monastery, or if there's not a monastery around, often enough they'll do it in their own home, where they give themselves to one day and one night to these 8 precepts that we just chanted. It's this sort of sense that for one day they step up the practice a little bit, perhaps commit themselves to a regular regimen of meditation, commit themselves to celibacy for a day, no worldly entertainments, so just for one day to put down the newspapers, the novels and the television programs and the music, the whole world and the whole game of sort of trying to prop oneself up through one's clothing and makeup and jewelry and so forth. So I thought tonight, just sitting here meditating quite peacefully actually, and kind of change in plans as far as what I was going to talk about. And what comes to mind actually was the just looking back at the Anapanasati Sutta again, this great teaching of the Buddha, this great discourse, where he gives instruction around mindfulness of breathing, meditation, and what it is and how to do it. And it's such a beautiful discourse, and it's so nicely described and explained. And I just thought I would kind of fit that in possibly with the other topic I was going to talk about tonight, the 7 Enlightenment factors, but that seems like a pretty full talk to talk about both the Anapanasati Sutta as well as all the 7 Enlightenment factors. Nevertheless, I'll start with just going over the Anapanasati Sutta, especially just the first and the last tetrad, just looking at that a little bit. And the nice thing about the Anapanasati Sutta, when we talk about it or when you read it, is it can almost just be a guided meditation in itself. Just the instructions are so plain and simple and grounding. And so it starts off, as people know, this very beautiful scene where the monks are gathered around the Buddha. It's not clear how many, but you get the sense there's probably upward of 100, maybe even a couple hundred monks and nuns and even lay people. And they're gathered around the Buddha, and the Buddha is sort of giving his blessing to the Sangha. He's sort of reflecting back what the Sangha is. And this is powerful. You just have to picture yourself in the scene. It's a full moon night, and the Buddha is in let's picture a field somewhere in India. And it's very quiet, and the stars are out, and of course there's no village playing music over the loudspeaker or anything like that. It's just very quiet. And the Buddha just says, monks, this is a rare assembly of beings. And you just think about that sort of statement. So straight away, if you're there, you're cognizant of how special the situation is. And he says, this is a rare scene. It's in this assembly of monastics, some beings are fully enlightened, total arahants, completely destroyed all delusion. Some monks and nuns, some beings are not fully enlightened, but they're on the path. They're non-returners, once-returners, or stream enterers. Some of the monastics or the people there may not even be fully enlightened or partially enlightened, but they are practicing different meditation subjects that develop the mind. So they might be developing contemplation of death. They might be contemplating asubha. They might be developing loving kindness meditation. They might be developing compassion meditation. And he just says, there's no idle chatter in this community. Like, this is just a community of heartwood. A pure, wise, upright community of beings. And so by starting this discourse off in this way, it just immediately was going to give rise to the people listening a sense of how special it is. And even us here, even though we don't have the Buddha and we don't have an assembly of fully enlightened monks and nuns around us and so forth, but we are practitioners on the path. And the Buddha is present in the sense that his teachings are present. And we should be cognizant of the specialness of this situation. And everybody here, just for a moment, just put down your past completely. So you come here and, different people are on different levels of well-being and / despair. I mean, it's kind of a whole mixed bag, of course. Everybody's in a different boat, in one sense. But you put all that down and you take into account just what an incredible opportunity it is to be exposed to these teachings. To be in a community which is harmonious, which is really extremely harmonious. It's mature, It's well intended, the good intentions that are bubbling forth in this community, both from the monastics as well as the lay people. It's extremely special and precious. So really take that into account. Be very conscious of that. And that gives rise to a very particular, very beautiful feeling. And it prepares the mind for, say, mindfulness of breathing meditation. If you are, say, new here, or if you're listening to this on the web these days, there's a lot of web listeners, and you might not be, say, part of a community, you may not know anything about Buddhism hardly, or you may not have faith. But let's say you just have that aspiration to truth and freedom, and there's something in you which says you want to be freed. You want to realize, say, the highest good. You want to realize truth, whatever that is, freedom, peace, and something in you says, "Okay, this is the most important thing in my life. I don't care about any kind of ism. I just want to be at peace, deeply at peace, and not selfish." Suppose that's your aspiration. Well, how rare is that aspiration? I mean, how many people have that in this planet of 7 billion feed-on-demand world that we live in? That's an aspiration which is hard to come by, actually. And we can sometimes forget that. We live in this community, here anyways, where actually it's pretty prevalent as far as aspirations go. But out there in the world where it is, frankly, a dog-eat-dog world, survival of the fittest, both economically, materially, as well as, in many cases, physically. I mean, the world is at war in many countries of this planet, and survival is not a sure thing. Teachings are not necessarily wise teachings and peaceful teachings, and there are religions that sometimes might be teaching things that we would consider unwholesome. Of course, they say the same thing, but nevertheless, I think this is something to reflect on and appreciate, that we have a teaching here anyways. If you study the teaching, you listen to it, you can understand that there's no harm that can come from it. Through the teaching itself, it will never result in an unwholesome mind state. The teaching itself will never encourage killing. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter how bad they are, someone else. Killing is never right, and aversion is never the wise response to a situation. hatred, or ill will. Greed, these are unwholesome mind states that it's beautifully and very clearly spelled out in the Buddha's teachings. And just to have access to these kinds of teachings, and to have that aspiration that wants to realize these teachings just that much, if you have nothing else in this world, that's a great resource. That's an invaluable resource that will carry you very far towards what's beautiful, towards what's meaningful. And it's not necessarily an aspiration that will lead to material well-being, not necessarily. It may not even lead in the short run to peace. I mean, the path to peace is arduous, and it takes commitment, and sometimes you have to come to terms with who you are and your history and your past. You have to learn how to let go of things that you carry around with you, identities and attachments. And that's challenging, and sometimes we come up face to face with these difficulties and these relationships that seem, on the one hand, we can't abandon them, yet on the other hand, they seem so challenging. And this is our karma, if you will, our vipaka. We're in situations, and we have to bear with them sometimes. You know, our physical situation, our material situation. But whatever the case may be, for every one of us, all that stuff is different, and that's not the point. We have this aspiration that's inside of us that we are going to care for, and we're going to nourish. And come hell or high water, we will not abandon this aspiration, because it's so precious, and we have so much trust in it. And the details as to how this aspiration is going to be manifest, well, that's for us to work out over time. For the rest of our life, be it short or long, we have to massage and channel this aspiration and care for it and make sure that it doesn't get tarnished, that it doesn't get neglected, and that it doesn't fade. So we just reflect on that for a few minutes, just as a way to prepare the mind. Kind of brings a little bit of brightness to the mind. And then the Buddha says in the discourse, he says, so how is it, monks, that one develops mindfulness of breathing? And the commentary here says that monks, of course, refers to not just monks, but anybody who's developing mindfulness. These instructions apply. He says, here monks, a monk gone to the forest or to the root of a tree or to an empty hut sits down. Okay, so straight away, just take note of that. He's gone to the forest, to the root of a tree, to an empty hut. So it's not something you can do very easily, say when you are at a festival or you're engaged, you're at a dinner party with relatives. It's something where you have to seclude yourself. You have to take the physical body away from engagement and sit it down in a quiet place. Nature, of course, is something very peaceful and calming and soothing about nature. So the Buddha naturally encourages practitioners to go to a forest as being the ideal environment for cultivation. But it doesn't have to be a forest. It can be a monastery like this. It can be your own room, quiet part of your house that you set aside for meditation. But there is this aspect of physical seclusion which bhavana in general is supported by physical seclusion. The world of engagement, there's much good that can happen there, of course. There's much helping and sharing and loving that can take place. There's also a lot of delusion that gets exchanged and passed around. A lot of confusion, a lot of distorted ideas, a lot of conditioning that you've experienced and that you just simply channel into the world through habit. And when it comes to developing clarity of mind, it's very useful to pull yourself out of those situations so that you can take a fresh look at your experience. You're not who everybody tells you you are. The personality that you feel yourself to be is very often just a reflection of other people's wishes or disappointments. So when you're in seclusion, it's like you come face to face. Okay, what is this? What is this body? What is this mind? What is this personality? I'm not going to look at myself through my parents' eyes, through society's eyes. The society just sees us as a consumer. That's what you are. You're owned, basically. You are owned by many corporations, and you behave exactly as you want them to. And that's worth thinking about, actually, because it's disturbing and it's true. But to pull yourself out of that kind of situation, kind of put yourself in a hut or at the foot of a tree, is a step away. It's kind of like a rebellion. It's asserting your freedom from all these corporations that want to encourage you to crave as much as they can, so that because once you start craving, you become like a puppet, and they have the strings. This is corporations and companies that are trying to sell you information and sell you products. So much of the world just runs on this kind of mindset of, cultivate craving, figure out exactly how you can manipulate people into wanting as much as possible, and find how you can tap into that craving of people. And it's incredibly sophisticated how corporations can do this, and the way that they have these study groups and to study and analyze people's preferences and opinions and find out where their weak spots are, and then they just jump on it. And this happens to children even, at very small ages. They try and brand children to, hook them into being committed to Apple products or to different products and Disney products. And it's a very degrading, dehumanizing picture of the human condition to be subject to that and to just not be aware of it, and to just flow along like a puppet or a programmed machine. So we start then with this physical seclusion. So gone to the forest, to the root of a tree, to an empty hut, one sits down, folds one legs crosswise. Ideally, you can sit down, you fold your legs in a half-lotus position. That's a very nice, stable position. But of course, if you have problems with the knees, you sit in a chair, this is possible. Ideally, you would have the back erect so it's not leaning against the wall, although sometimes that's necessary as well if you have a bad back or a sore back. But you want to be in a posture that is upright, comfortable, relaxed, but not slothful. So I think a good word here is just balanced, just upright and balanced. Gone to the forest, to the root of a tree, or to an empty hut, one sits down, folds one legs crosswise, sets one body erect, and establishes mindfulness in front of oneself. So one puts down the past, one puts down the future. That's what mindfulness is. One establishes mindfulness here and now. And ever mindful, one breathes in. Ever mindful, one breathes out. And breathing in long, one knows, I breathe in long. Breathing out long, one knows, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, one knows, I breathe in short. Breathing out short, one knows I breathe out short. So these are the first two steps. One knows a long breath as a long breath, if one happens to have a nice long breath, or one knows a short breath as being nice and short. And so what is it about this long breath and short breath? This always used to I found this annoying because it seemed kind of slightly arbitrary. And I think it is. The point here is not that you figure out whether your breath counts as long or short. But the point is that you're paying attention to its quality. I think the Buddha could just as easily have used coarse or fine, or pleasant or unpleasant, or whatever. But the point is that there's something that you're paying attention to in the breathing process. And I think the other point here is that you're not trying to control anything. By saying whether it's long or it's short, you just know it. The point is you're not trying to control it to be long, or you're not trying to breathe in any special way. But however the breath is, it is. And you have to learn how to not control the breath. So there's just this bright awareness that's with the body, and the breathing is coming in and going out, and you're aware of it. It's very nice, isn't it? So those are the first two steps. Breathing in long, one knows I breathe in long. Breathing out long. Breathing in short, one knows. And then breathing out short, one knows I breathe out short. And then he trains us. I shall breathe in, experiencing the whole body. And I shall breathe out, experiencing the whole body. So here, especially for people educated in this modern world, we can be very cerebral, and we can lose touch with the body. And this process of breathing in, I shall experience the whole body. Breathing out, I shall experience the whole body. You can almost feel the breath. I know Ajahn Yatiko teaches to breathe in through the feet. You breathe up, and then you breathe out through the feet. And basically the point here is that you don't really imagine it too much, but the point is you have the sense of the whole body, from the toes, the breath coming up and then going out again. So you can just feel the whole body. Just calm. Calm, peaceful, the breath moving in through the body, moving out. And so there's that whole body awareness. Now, there is this ambiguity, the body, does that mean the body of breath? Some people interpret this to mean the body of breath. And if that feels really right to you, then that's fine as well. Just feel the fullness of the in-breath and the fullness of the out-breath. I think that might be very appropriate for people who have a natural samadhi, maybe who have come off the farm and maybe not gone through the education process we have, not quite as cerebral, people very body-oriented. They don't have to work at it so much to be in touch with their body, but for many of us, we do. So we train thus: I shall breathe in, experiencing the whole body. I shall breathe out, experiencing the whole body. I shall breathe in, calming the bodily formation. I shall breathe out, calming the bodily formation. Again, just an extension of that. First you become aware of the body, and as you breathe in and as you breathe out, you just continually calm the body. Where is there any tension? Where is there any holding? Where is there any, just the tiniest tension? I can sometimes, it's a real joy for me. I can feel, say, 2 inches down from my belly button, from my navel, and in a couple of inches. Sometimes there's this tension, just almost like right in the center of my being. And when I can relax that, I have this very wonderful, this whole belly opening sensation. That's just one example of where there can be a tension that is just being held, and sometimes you're not even aware of it. So the body moves through the breath, it moves in and it moves out. And as you breathe out, it's taking all the tension away. So one breathes in, one trains us, I shall breathe in, calming the bodily formation. And I shall breathe out, calming the bodily formation. And that covers the first tetrad. And just that much, that's worth memorizing. I remember at Ajahn Wanchai's, I was spending some time in a little cave once, and I had memorized this. And I would sit down, close my eyes, and set my body straight. And in my mind, I would say, okay, here a monk, gone to the forest, the root of a tree, or to an empty hut, sits down. And I couldn't even get past that, because that would bring up so much joy, because that's exactly what I was already doing. It's like the Buddha was speaking directly to me almost. And I was doing exactly what he said, as I'd gone to a cave even. And there's just this feeling that, yes, the Buddha has a well-expounded Dhamma, and here I'm doing exactly what he told me to do. So to memorize, here a monk gone to the forest, to the root of a tree or to an empty hut, sits down. Having folded his legs crosswise, set his body erect, ever mindful he breathes in, ever mindful he breathes out. Breathing in long, he understands, I breathe in long. Breathing out long, he understands, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he understands, I breathe in short. Breathing out short, he understands, I breathe out short. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, experiencing the whole body. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, experiencing the whole body. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, calming the bodily formation. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, calming the bodily formation. So that's the first tetrad. And I think just the very next step, I'll just say it because it's also nice to add into the mix. It's once the body is calm and tranquil and one develops a sort of sensitivity, one trains thus, I shall breathe in experiencing joy. One trains thus, I shall breathe out experiencing joy. And if we stop there, that is a very beautiful meditation in itself. The joy, it just comes from the peace of having, it's just such a simple experience. What can be simpler than being aware in the present moment and watching the breath? That's an ultimately simple experience. And it's so simple and pure and straightforward that it just gives rise to a kind of joy in its simplicity. So this aspect of the Anapanasati is all about calming and focusing and stilling. And now I just thought I would jump to the last tetrad, which is about kind of contemplation. And it's okay if your kind of meditation on the breath is working, if the mind is getting still, it's getting bright, it's getting powerful, perhaps. Such a joy is arising. You can just stay with that. You don't have to worry about getting attached to it. I mean, it's okay to delight in stillness and seclusion of body and seclusion of mind, of stillness of body, stillness of mind. But then we also go on to contemplate, because this is where the real freedom comes from, and as I understand it, is through contemplation and through understanding. And the contemplation aspect is still using the breath as a kind of background. But like the first one, I shall breathe in contemplating impermanence. And I shall breathe out contemplating impermanence. So impermanence, this is almost like a bedrock of our reflection. And this is something that it's hard to see because we take it so much for granted. I remember one teacher, his brother, visiting Thailand and kind of almost making fun of the teacher, the Western teacher that I'm speaking of. Because his brother would say, well, of course, this thing about impermanence, everybody knows everything's impermanent. What's the big deal? And what can you say to that? It's like, well, yeah, you know it, but you don't know it. It's like everything's impermanent, but you don't know the implications. What does that mean? What are the implications of the fact that everything is impermanent? Places where you can focus the contemplation of impermanence can vary, but like one, of course, is the body. We've talked a lot about that recently, the body, the impermanence of the body, death, the inevitability of death. The uncertainty of death. This beautiful talk we listened to from Bhikkhu Bodhi the other night. We don't know when it will happen. We don't know how it will happen. But we also contemplate the impermanence, and this is where we often get stuck on things, is of mental states, of moods. There's something so deluding about the present moment. The present moment, we feel so immersed in the present moment that we give it an importance that it just simply doesn't deserve. We lose all perspective. And what is actually simply a passing mind state, one mind state out of trillions that you're going to have in this lifetime, it has this incredible importance to it. Just think about the mind state you were in, say, 2 hours ago. There's a good chance you don't even remember what it was. And whatever it was, it just seems kind of, right now it's just kind of no big deal. It's like whatever the state that was, it doesn't matter. Or the mind state you were in 10 minutes ago even, that's kind of past now. It's neither here nor there. What you feel is important is what's in front of your face right now. So this quality of whatever is present, we seem to forget the significance of impermanence. We seem to forget that it just goes, and we give it so much importance. These mind states. So for Ajahn Chah, this was a major contemplation. Using the impermanence and uncertainty of any given condition that arises. A mood arises. Well, it's not so sure. It's going to change. Despair arises. Well, it's not so sure. It's going to change. It'll change both in the short term. It could be gone by tonight, by tomorrow morning. It's going to change in the long term. The foundation of that despair is constantly changing. And of course, our life is impermanent. Our life is uncertain. So that's the first contemplation, breathing in. One trains thus, I shall breathe in, contemplating impermanence. One breathes thus, I shall breathe out, contemplating impermanence. One trains thus, I shall breathe in, contemplating, the word is viraga. It's often translated, oddly enough, as fading away, which I like personally, but I think viraga quite literally means dispassion, like no raga. Raga means passion or lust or kind of desire. So viraga is like dispassion. So what does that mean, contemplate dispassion? Well, you can contemplate in terms of you were just contemplating impermanence, how things are impermanent, your moods are impermanent, your feelings are impermanent, the object of your desire is impermanent. Your status is impermanent. Your family relationships are impermanent. And this gives rise to a sense of, I don't want to be pursuing anything. That's what dispassion is all about. It's the sense of, there's nothing out there that's inherently valuable. There's nothing worth pursuing externally. And that's viraga. The reason I like the word fading away is because the natural result of dispassion is like you go to that object less and less. It's like it just starts to fade away. Things come into consciousness because we turn our attention to it. And when you begin to feel a sense of dispassion towards things, our attention doesn't turn to it. So that just starts to fade away. And it's not like it fades away into a bleak sort of nihilistic emptiness, but it just starts to fade away, and what's left is the present moment and the clarity of the present moment, which is what we're cultivating. And then one trains us, I shall breathe in, contemplating cessation. One trains us, I shall breathe out, contemplating cessation. And so what does cessation mean? Well, there's both on the more mundane level in our practice, those objects that we obsess about, that we're concerned with, they simply cease from our consciousness because we have contemplated them in such a way that they just fade away, they fade away, they fade away, and then they cease. They're no longer in our consciousness. On perhaps a more profound level, what the cessation is referring to, hopefully, is that craving, which, as we chanted tonight, that craving is what leads to suffering. We contemplate the world in such a way that the craving just fades away and fades away and fades away until the craving itself ceases. That's our goal, you might say, is the cessation of craving, that craving which leads to unwholesome mind states. Oh, even the craving that leads to wholesome mind states, that all craving, eventually, for the Buddhist practitioner, craving comes to cessation in this sort of snuff out of heat, of discontent, of delusion, of craving. All that comes to a cessation. And then finally, we train thus, I shall breathe in contemplating relinquishment, and I shall train thus, I shall breathe out contemplating relinquishment. Once we start to experience on deeper and deeper levels how everything arises and passes away, arises and passes away, and we start to see the futility of trying to construct any kind of reality and world based on this sinking universe of impermanent experiences that arise and fall away. It's hopeless to build any kind of security in the external world. And so at the end of it all, there's this relinquishment, there's this fundamental deep letting go of this body which we hold on to, letting go of our worldly aspirations, letting go, a complete letting go, and that's the complete letting go is what we want, and complete letting go is what Ajahn Chah says is complete peace. So we're moving into now in our winter retreat, the two, we're going to do a couple of weeks here, more contemplative fortnight, and I think we're going to be doing some asubha, moving into asubha a little bit perhaps, and just contemplation in general. And this tetrad is a very useful tetrad to memorize and to come back to. And even just the beauty, if you can kind of appreciate just the beauty of this sort of teaching, what a wise teaching this is. You can almost use this last tetrad, even as part of the first tetrad. The beauty of it can lead to the samadhi experience, the stillness of mind, simply because you sense it's such a beautiful and impressive, rare teaching that you've come across, and you kind of go through this over and over. But it's not a teaching that you can can get anything from simply through reading or through being devoted to it, or like chanting that we did tonight. I mean, these are all supportive tools, the bowing and the different conventions. But none of that is really what's training the heart. What's really training the heart is in the meditation, and using the different tools in meditation to liberate the heart from delusion and from suffering, from wrong views, from wrong understanding that creates turmoil in the heart. At the end of each tetrad, the Buddha goes on to explain how, through cultivating these different aspects of mindfulness of breathing, you're fulfilling the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And then he also goes on to say how the foundations of mindfulness fulfill the 7 enlightenment factors. And I was also going to talk about the 7 enlightenment factors, but this has gone on for 45 minutes now, so I won't. But I will just mention how each of the enlightenment factors are said to rest on 4 different qualities. So seclusion, viveka, seclusion, and that's something, say, for the monastic, especially for the lay people, resident lay people. Seclusion has its dangers because we have to balance seclusion. It's through seclusion is one way you can start going off in your practice. And that's why total seclusion is not a good thing, because we've got to get some feedback. We've got to be mirrored by the world so that we can recognize where our attachments and delusions might be. But we've also got to feel free to know that it's okay to be alone. And to have those times when you are alone in your hut or under a tree, and you're meditating on the Dhamma. That's a state to fall in love with. And you also want to, with every state, there's always its near enemy, its near danger. And the near danger, of course, is that you become self-centered and without realizing it. You start thinking you're special somehow. Maybe you get into kind of refined states that you can get into through solitude, and you start thinking you're special, or you're somehow superior, which of course is almost always a major delusion. So we don't want to just encourage complete solitude, but we want to experience solitude. We want to know it. And seclusion of the body, of course, supports seclusion of mind. It's no good to go back to your kuti and then you sort of have like novels, or you have like worldly distractions, because that's not seclusion. Maybe physical seclusion, but it's not. You're still filling the mind with all kinds of stuff that just is not supportive of reflections on Dhamma. So it's supported. These enlightenment factors are supported by seclusion, and by fading away. Actually, by the 3 contemplations at the end of the 4th tetrad. So by dispassion, by cessation, and ripens is Bhikkhu Bodhi's word for it. It ripens in relinquishment. So that's a talk on, Anapanasati, developing a plug for memorizing the relevant passages that you find inspiring. Even the first section is worth memorizing, where the Buddha is surrounded by the monks under the full moon, midnight, and he gives this teaching. And there's different monks practicing in different corners of the monastery, and a very beautiful image. And even just that in itself, contemplating that, picturing the Buddha, imagine the confidence that you'd have if you saw a fully enlightened Buddha surrounded by dozens of fully enlightened beings, each one of them pure in heart and beyond doubt. To see that would be incredible. Even to think it would be incredible. So even that is worth memorizing. So that's I think I'll end the talk there, and that's just a talk to encourage us in our meditation practice.